Hi, Mr. Martin. Martin, can you hear me?
Good evening, everyone. Most welcome to today's webinar. We are just about to start. Please comment on the chat if you can hear me, if I'm audible.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Awesome. Good. I want to welcome you again to today's webinar. We are excited to be here, and we are joined by Nabihah and Martin. And we are going to have an exciting session today as we discuss on matters cyber risk and careers in cyber risk. Right, so we're giving it 2 minutes and then we'll be starting. All right, so we'll be starting it off and then we'll get the others to join us as we proceed. We are again excited to have us all join us today. We have a wonderful panel today, and we are joined in by Nabihah. And I will ask Nabihah and Martin, you can turn on your videos for us to see you. But you're joined by Nabihah and Martin Nkonge. Martin and Nabihah joining us today as we are discussing our topic on navigating the digital world with our life in cybersecurity professional. First, as we are starting this, cybersecurity as area in careers has been a very interesting and trending topic. All of us, or maybe most of us, have heard of the attacks that have been prevailing locally and even globally. And for some of us who are in different domains in IT or in ICT, we are maybe looking to advance what we are doing, whether you are a developer or you are in audit or you're in risk or you are a networking specialist, or you're just from school and you are transitioning to the job domain and you're wondering, where do I start? Or maybe you are an experienced professional in IT or a technical related area and you're wondering, how can I advance what I'm doing, or how can I transition into cybersecurity? One of the domains that Nabihah and Martin will be talking to us about today is on matters cyber risk. And most of the time we rarely hear about cyber risk, and we are mostly introduced to cybersecurity from the hacking side of things. But today we get to really appreciate from Nabihah and Martin on what do they do on a day-to-day basis. And so I want to start by introducing, before I start our questions and panel, I want to start by introducing both Martin and Nabihah. I have known Nabihah for quite some time now, and Nabihah is an expert on matters risk. Nabihah is a principal risk consultant at Serianu Limited, a cybersecurity firm based in Nairobi. And we are indeed excited to have you, Nabihah. So welcome to today's panel. We are also joined by Martin Nkonge, and Martin Nkonge is a Senior Information Security Officer at UAP Old Mutual here in Nairobi. And I'm very glad to also have Martin join us. and he's an experienced professional and an expert in these matters, information security and risk. So once again, thank you so much, Nabihah and Martin, for making time to join us. I will let Martin and Nabihah say hi as we start our round of discussions this evening. We'll start with Nabihah, then we'll go to Martin. Ladies first.
All right, thank you, Martin. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me in this session. I'm really excited for the discussions we'll be having this evening. I look forward to this session. Thank you.
Good evening,
Awesome.
team.
Thank you, Nabihah.
Yes. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Nabihah. Good evening, everyone. I think we are a number of Martins. You have Martin Mwangi, Martin Nkonge. Yeah, so it's an awesome. My name is Martin Nkonge, part of information security team at Old Mutual. It's Old Mutual now. We are transitioning to Old Mutual from UAP. I'm looking forward for some good discussions and also learning as well from the panel and the team. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Martin. We'll go right into it. And the way we have planned our webinar today is we will have we'll have questions that I have lined up to Nabihah, both Nabihah and Martin. But for all of us who are joining today, please feel free to send in your questions on chat, and then I'll pick them, and then Nabihah and Martin will get to also answer those questions as we continue. So don't shy away from posting any question that you might have as we are proceeding. I want to start with yourself, Nabihah. One of the questions, one of the things that I would like us to talk to us is one, cyber security and cyber risk, because today we are talking about on matters cyber risk. Is as we are listening and hearing about what is happening in the cyberspace, there are a lot of attacks that are happening, and maybe you can help us appreciate one, what do you do and on a day-to-day basis, and as a cyber risk professional, you're a principal risk consulting consultant at Serianu. What does that mean? And then as you get to talk to us about that, if you can also help us appreciate what are some of the attacks and threats that you're seeing, and what are those trends, and just double that up for us as you're doing your introduction for us to know who you are and what you're doing. If you can help us appreciate that, and also what are some of the challenges that you're seeing on matters cyber risk professionals, and how have you overcome those challenges over the years in your career journey. Nabihah, welcome.
Thank you, Martin. I'll try and answer to the best of my ability. So I'll answer your first question in terms of what being a principal risk consultant entails. So in the risk consulting department, we're in charge of doing different consultancy projects in terms of cybersecurity risks. So we have compliance audits, which we do. So maybe some organizations want to be ISO compliant, NIST compliant. These are just cybersecurity frameworks and standards that maybe they want to align to. So we help organizations know where they are currently, so their current status and what they need to do in order to achieve that compliance. We also do regulatory audits. So in terms of the banking, CBK might have some standards which they need the banks to comply to. SASTRA may need the SACCOs to comply to certain standards. So we also help organizations make sure they're compliant to their regulator. We also do other kinds of assessments. So these are mostly statutory, like business continuity planning assessments. We also do things like the payment card industry assessments, that's the PCI. As part of risk consulting, also a key part of our jobs is training. So in terms of knowledge sharing, also taking the client through some of our findings, just walking them through the entire cybersecurity journey. So at the end of it all, we're able to produce a report, and of course with a roadmap of how they need to implement the recommendations we've given them. So it's exciting to see how an organization is able to move from, let's say, a maturity status of 1, which is not mature, to a 2 or a 3, and eventually a 4 or 5. So that's a really fulfilling part of my career. Sorry, over to you, Martin. The second question.
All right. So I'll actually want to hold it at that point, because the second question was talking about some of the challenges or opportunities we have in cyber risk, and how that journey has been for you. But I want to switch over to Martin first. And Martin, I know you're coming from a corporate side. It's very interesting to get to understand the twist from a consulting side, which Nabihah has talked about, and you being within an organization and actually managing that. And for those of us who are joined in, it's very different from what you might see in the movies and on the news on how exciting cybersecurity is, and actually you being in charge or being accountable on closing on issues, on resolving issues, and ensuring that the organization is compliant to cybersecurity standard. So Martin, I would like you to help us appreciate what has been your view on cybersecurity, number one, and when does that merge in and blend in on matters risk? And I'm asking that for the purpose of our audience here, who have heard of the term cybersecurity and have also heard of the term risk, and are wondering, is it the same thing? Am I doing the same thing? Should I pursue it? And also for the purpose of our audiences who are pursuing career in risk, maybe in governance, if you can help us appreciate what does it look like, especially on your day-to-day job, on matters risk and governance and information and IT risk.
Thank you, Martin. That's a very good question. How do you draw a line between cybersecurity and IT risk management and governance? Both, if I may start from that point, are part of the broader information security spectrum of career paths that you can take. Both are tied at the hip, in that from IT risk and governance, you're overlooking the entire processes, technologies that come in around IT. You're looking compliance to the different regulators, legal, industry-based practices, and trying to then advise where are you in terms of compliance to those. You're looking at matters around management of risk, around the human elements, maybe internal processes and the people that are doing that and the risk that they bring to the organization. You're looking at the vendor, the different suppliers that the business is working with to deliver that competitive edge to their customers. Then you're looking at the risk that by the virtue of that engagement that you're exposing the business to. You're looking at also the projects, the different initiatives that are being run within IT department that have an IT angle. Then what is the risk that you're handling in terms of, maybe someone can mute please, in terms of onboarding of that project or onboarding of that technology, what are the underlying risks that you need to address. So it's you're also looking at then the reporting, because you're the person who is giving the first level of assurance to the executive, to the key decision makers around the effectiveness of the internal controls that you have in place to ensure the confidentiality integrity and availability of IT systems and data. So you're doing a lot of reporting around the effectiveness, giving assurance that the controls are either effective or not, and meeting the targets that have been set by the organization. You also rely to the second and third level of assurances. You have the enterprise risk management, which looks at the business angle. You have your group internal audits that more or less are the independent audits within the business. And therefore, you are a key stakeholder that is trying to manage that relationship and make sure that that information is flowing across. Cybersecurity in itself is also very broad, because also you're looking at all the IT systems and security technologies that you have in place, just to give assurance that all cyber-related incidences are identified, detected, remediated, and IT is able to recover from those incidents within the timelines that you set yourself according to maturity levels that you are in. And therefore, you have your analysts, you have your SOC, the entire SOC team, where the IT risk forms part of our permanent. You have a permanent role that you play within that. So I will stop at that point. Maybe I've tried to the best of my ability to draw the differences between the two and how the two work together. Yeah.
All right. Nabihah, I'll come back to you and put an interesting twist to this question. A lot of us, or most of us who are joined into this webinar, might want to understand. I want to do what you're doing, Nabihah. I'm looking at you being a principal risk consultant at Serianu. I get to understand what you're doing, but if I'm starting my journey, what would you advise somebody who is just starting? How can they best prepare to become an excellent risk professional later in life?
All right, another very good question. So if there's a word I can really emphasize for this session is just to be curious. So curiosity plays a big role in terms of you growing yourself in a cybersecurity career. So you need to be curious, you need to keep up to date with what's happening. You also need to look at different certifications out there. So they're the likes of CISA by ISACA, CISM by ISACA, certified in cybersecurity by ISE Squared. So you need to build your skills and enroll for some of these courses so you can get certified in order to become a risk consultant. Another key thing you need to do is get a lot of practice, be in the know of what's happening in terms of trends from regulators, from industry best practice standards, and also the regulators outside Kenya. Just understand what people are doing from a cybersecurity perspective and what they need to be in compliance with. Another key thing is to keep up to date with the current trends, know the current attacks which are happening, what's needed by an organization in order to secure them, what sort of controls do they need to implement, and then also just network, find a mentor who is within the space, see what you can learn from them, have regular touch points, listen to them, and see how they can help you through your cybersecurity journey. Thank you, Martin.
Awesome, precise and to the point. And those of you who are looking for mentors, one of the points that Nabihah has brought up is you need to have a mentor. Or you can consider having a mentor. So if you're looking for one, you have Nabihah here, and she'll be ready to help you. One of the things that I picked up from Nabihah is for those of us who are looking to get into a career in matters cyber risk, ensure you're curious. Nabihah has talked about knowing what is happening, what are the trends, looking for certifications and skills that are required in the industry, and pursuing them. Going back to Martin, you as you're talking, I heard you mention enterprise risk. And I would like you to help us appreciate, is enterprise risk different from cyber risk?
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, enterprise risk is different from information security, or like to call cyber risk. In terms, I'm trying to draw a line here, is that enterprise risk handles business-related risks that are tied to the standard operating procedures that we have within each business, line of business, and also oversee IT as well. I'm saying this because that IT is an enabler to business operations, and therefore an enterprise risk officer would not only handle business-related risk, maybe around fraud, around insider threats, around SODA, what we call schemes of what does SODA mean? Schemes of what? I'm forgetting the whatever, but the approval, the market checkup process.
I'm learning this from you.
Yes, thank you. You're looking at the market checkup processes that they have within the system to ensure that one cannot be able to do end-to-end processing of a transaction. And also they are looking at the regulatory and the legal requirements. And therefore, and on top of that, handling the IT risk as well. So there's a line between the two, a clear line, Martin.
Interesting, Martin. And to build onto that, what would you say forms, I'm trying to build a mental image for anyone who is joined in today and they want to have an appreciation of getting to appreciate what they will do on a day-to-day basis if they were you. And I know you've already talked to us bits and pieces that they need to expect: risk matters, budget matters, reporting to the management teams. But in very broad strokes, would you please give us an appreciation of what does a day look like? You go into the morning in the office, and what does that day look like for a risk professional?
Thank you, Martin. Allow me just to, before to answer that, to go back to the question that you asked Nabihah around what are the most important skills.
Sure.
I think also to what Nabihah did, what I've learned from my own experience is that you need to have very strong communication skills to supplement your technical skills as well. And I'm saying this because you need to communicate risk in terms and in language that the business understands. And the language of the business really is around business strategy, profit, and are we meeting the the objectives or not. And therefore, if you cannot be able to translate the risk in terms of the strategy and in terms of impact on the business, it becomes a little bit of a dicey situation. So you can be gifted very much in cyber risk and understanding the technical bit and the risk that it poses, but if you cannot translate it in the language that the business understands, then you lose the value. Now, going back to the question you asked of how my day-to-day looks like. No day is really the same, to be honest, but I'll try to pick on the components that are more or less at least constant. My day would start with SOC operations. I'm a player in the daily, SOC operations within Old Mutual. SOC is a security operations center whereby we have our own, analysis that we do of all the lists that we are seeing. Prioritization in terms of the criticality to the business, the response that needs to be taken, measuring of metrics, key metrics that we report to show the effectiveness of the SOC, and also advising the team in terms of the risk that the incidences they are seeing poses to the business, and in terms of the remediation as well, as per the standards, IT standards and policies that we have in place. So that's a constant activity that would happen every morning, and will carry on throughout the day depending on the incidences that are being picked. My other engagement is around the different IT initiatives that are being rolled out. So doing a lot of project risk assessment and being part of the project team that is learning with the deliverables that needs to be achieved within the project. So looking at those risks, understanding the remediations that are being implemented, are they compliant to our own internal processes, and giving advice and picking on any emerging risks that are coming in and reporting to the project steerco. So that also takes a bulk of my day. Also coordinating on a lot of audit matters. We do have a lot of audit being derived either from group internal audit, who they have their own audit program running out throughout the year, IT specific audits, and therefore I'll be the key person who's coordinating the audit, the feedback, the evidencing, the giving of management actions, tracking of those issues to be, to be resolved on time, on time resolution of those audit issues that have been picked, reporting on audit matters to either the group CIO or maybe to the different risk boards that we have, and therefore being on top of audit matters. Another component that takes most of my days around awareness and training. So we have an awareness program that we are running that is very vigorous. So you're doing a lot of articles on emerging things that you're seeing within the financial and the worldwide, and coming up with articles that will go to the different bulletins, coming up with the training packs that you need for, setting up of targeted simulations, phishing simulations to the different departments within the business. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Martin, for that. That was quite detailed. I hope those of us who are joined in today and you're wondering what does a day look like, that really helps to paint a picture for you on what that day would look like if you are in Martin's shoes. Nabihah, I want to switch over to you. And I know part of what you've done, Nabihah, over the last couple of years, you've been heavily involved in research, and part of that research engaged the Institute of Risk Management, IRM, I believe. And I would like you to just help us appreciate, for those of us who are joined in today, and they are professionals and experienced professionals in their respective fields, whether it's from an IT, from an audit, from a risk, from a security side. If you can help us appreciate the kind of work that you have done, and from a research point on matters risk frameworks, and how important you find that being for anyone who is pursuing a career in cybersecurity, or planning to move that into a cyber risk side of things.
All right. Thank you, Martin. So from a framework perspective, we noticed that there was a challenge in terms of reporting cybersecurity status to the board, to the risk management teams, to the audit teams, especially to the board in terms of, so previously what was happening was a lot of the reporting was done qualitatively. So you'd go in with a number of highs, mediums, lows, and this wasn't really understood at that level, at senior management and board level. And then what we realized is if you go with a different approach through using numbers, that's the quantitative approach, it becomes a lot more easier to understand at that level. So take, for example, how finance goes in with their numbers. So let's say Q3, they were here at maybe 50,000 profit, and then Q4 they were at like 70,000 profit. So it's easy to relate to that number. So you can see it's increased over a period of time. Similarly to cybersecurity, we're able to present a cybersecurity balance sheet where we're able to show you your status at a particular period of time. So an organization could be at 40% visibility, and then the next time we do the assessment, we realize that maybe 50 or 60%. So through using numbers, it's a lot more easier to ask for things like budget. It's easier to see where an organization needs to improve, where they need to emphasize on, where they need to focus their budget and attention on. So that's been really helping us. Another key area we've been focusing on in terms of research and development is around data protection. This has become a really key emerging issue, both from a global and local perspective. We're now seeing organizations being fined if you don't comply to data protection standards. And also globally, you're required to comply to certain standards, for example, GDPR, if you have members or if you're communicating with states within the EU. So that's another emerging issue and trend which we've been working on. So looking at this, what we've been able to do internally is to come up with work papers and methodologies of now assessing the organizations based on the frameworks which we're developing and actually training them on this. So we've been able to see organizations improve over time, which is a key highlight for us. And even in terms of them getting budget, so it's become a lot more easier to have these conversations at board level. Thank you.
Interesting twist there, Nabihah, and thank you for those insights. And relating that to a question from Francis on chat, and he asked, how do you ensure board and other executives support the cybersecurity initiatives which are considered A or B in the last few decades? And I'm thinking what Francis is referring to is for those of us who are in different roles and we know what our issues are within the organizations and we want to communicate that to top management and the board. Part of what Nabihah has talked about is how do you bring in numbers to it? And thank you a lot, Nabihah, to that. And I'll come back to that to explore that further. Martin, I would like you to help us understand from a corporate side, because this is part of what you do every day. You're either communicating to users, normal users, and you're educating them, or you're either communicating up on your initiatives. What are some of the skills, from a communication side of things? And I know you touched a bit of that, that we can learn from that journey. And number two is how can we learn from your journey in terms of communicating technical issues to the board and non-technical decision makers? Martin.
Thank you, Martin, for that. It's a very good question. I'll start with the latter. How do you communicate to the board on cyber risk and information security related matters to a board that is not really technical? From my own experience is that you need to communicate in business language. You need to communicate in the language that they are comfortable with and they understand and appreciate. What do I mean by that? You need to look at the business strategy first of all. And I'll respond this by giving illustrations as I go along the way. Let's say the business strategy is, digital transformation of this business within the next 2 to 3 years. And then the IT strategy that is underlining to enable that is saying that you're moving our entire load to cloud, computing, just to make sure that we can be able to take advantage of the APIs that are coming up and the integration with other key vendors and service suppliers. Then you need to be able then to have a sitting and to be listened at the board level, you need to tie the risk that you want to communicate to that. Either how does that impact negatively or positively to the overall business objectives? And how does that impact even to the profits that they envision they'll be able to accommodate or accumulate along the way? So if you're saying you're moving to the cloud, then
and let me
yes, sure, Martin.
And Martin, that's an interesting point, and sorry to interrupt you. Those of us, most of us who are joined here, maybe have a technical background. From what I hear you saying is, as you're doing your technical related activities in your technical role, whether I'm a pen tester or I am a SOC analyst, you're saying that I have to think about how that is going to benefit the business.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because all we do translates from a business perspective either into, you're impacting my top line in terms of expenses and the investment that you're asking the business to make, or you're enhancing, the numbers in terms of the profits by sealing all the loopholes within which these, profits that we're making can go out, either through regulator penalties, fraud, customer, reputational damage and all that. So you need to translate whatever it is that you're doing, whether you are SOC analyst or you are IT risk analyst, or maybe you're within, let's say, network engineer, but now security side. You need to translate that to show value in terms of the overall, how does it impact the top line for the business?
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much, Martin, for that. And those of us who are just joining in, today's topic is on appreciating the life in the cybersecurity or cyber risk professional. And today we have Nabihah Rishad and Martin Nkonge. And Martin Nkonge is a senior information security officer at Old Mutual, and Nabihah Rishad is a principal risk consulting consultant at Serianu. Interesting discussion that we've had. So far, we have got to appreciate what it takes for you to move into a cyber risk career path. And both Nabihah and Martin have talked to us about some of the skills and some of the considerations you need to begin thinking about if you are starting the journey. And I like the discussion from both Nabihah and Martin on what it takes to actually be in the job. And part of what Martin has just shared with us is what does it mean to communicate to the board and non-technical audiences. Nabihah, allow me to come back to you. An interesting point that you raised on data protection, which is a new law of the land. Recently in Kenya, for those of us joining from Kenya, we have seen the data commissioner penalize organizations. Some of us who are joined in this webinar might have certain responsibilities in the Data Protection Act. Maybe some of us are data protection officers. From a risk side, because you spend a lot of time in your research on this, what are some of the risk scenarios that those of us who are joined in, going back tomorrow at work, they should focus on? What scenario should they focus on to protect their data better and reduce the possibility of a compromise from a cyber attack?
All right, thanks, Martin. So if you're thinking about cyber risk exposures, you can classify them into three. The first one is fraud, where you're concerned about loss of money. The second one is data theft, where you're concerned with the loss of data. And then the third one is sabotage, where you're concerned with the loss of availability. So when we're focusing on data, things like data leakage, data theft, unauthorized disclosure of data are some of the things organizations need to look into. And when you're building your data a data protection program, the first thing which you need to do is do information classification. So you need to come up with a document classifying all the types of information within your organization, as well as the assets where this data sits. Before you protect anything, it's critical for organizations to know which assets they have and which data sits on these assets and where exactly they are hosted. Another key thing here is to come up with a data protection policy, which is compliant with both local and international best practice standards. And also in terms of incident response, if this was to happen within your organization, do you have proper escalation channels? Are you notifying the right people? Have you reported it to the office, the right officers? Things like reputational damage can then be controlled through having effective incident response mechanisms. Also from the technology side, it's critical for organizations to deploy things like data loss prevention tools, where you're able to monitor how your data is being processed, where it's being transferred to, and also having real-time visibility on what's happening with your data. Also from an email security perspective, deploying email security tools is also a critical factor when implementing a data protection program. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That was, seems like a lot of work, Nabihah, and quite wide. And I feel like those of us who are thinking about data protection or not thinking about it are already involved. There are some of us joined in who maybe are involved in configuring email security systems, but from what I hear you telling us is email security system is also a technology that helps to ensure that your data is protected in one way or another. So thanks a lot, Nabihah, for those insights. Martin, from what you've talked so far, I am sitting in your I'm in your shoes, and I'm wondering, do I feel overwhelmed? You talked about projects, you talked about risks, you talked about SOC, you talked about communicating to the board, you talked about training users. Question I have for you, and I'm asking this on behalf of the audience, is how do you begin juggling all these things at the same time as you progress in your career? How do you move from one line? Maybe those of us who are joined in, you are in a security offensive side of things. Somebody is in an audit line. And at some point, you want to begin juggling all these balls together. How do you do that? Is there a skill that is involved?
Thank you, Martin. I think from my own experience, it's just the willingness to learn and pick up on the, emerging trends and emerging the requirements that you need to adhere to, either from a policy or a standard level, and then asking yourself, what does that translate then to on the risk side? What is it? Is it a framework that I need to look at? Is it different controls that need to have in place? And just that willingness to learn and explore and be curious. You also need to unlearn some of things that you feel that maybe depending with the business strategy, you don't need to concentrate on them so much, just to align to what the business wants to achieve. And you learn others. You appreciate that from where I see it, majority of things that I'm talking about, it's a collaboration with other IT elements. You need to deliver through people. And therefore, your soft skills are key. You need to get the buying in from the different subject matter experts, if I may put that are learning with the different aspects. Yes. And therefore, you need to have their buying in, that they trust the recommendations that you're giving to them. You are a team player in that you clearly understand the laws that you bring in and now the value addition they are getting out of the engagements that they have with you. And also, just be willing also to have some tough conversations, because that will come along with the job. Objective, tough conversations that help you unlock some of the blockers that you meet along the way. Yeah, I think that's how I can summarize it, Martin, in so many ways.
All right, thank you so much, Martin. And I hope for those of us who are joined in and you either are juggling some of these things at the same time, or that is part of your job description, I hope that helps you to either add something onto your list or help do it more efficiently. Martin, as I come back to Nabihah, I want you to, there was a question from Francis on chat. And the question was on how do you ensure board and other executives support cybersecurity initiatives? And I know we've touched on this, so I want you to think through that as I first go to Nabihah. I'll come back to you for you to help us get to hear whether you have any additional thoughts on that as you're almost wrapping up. Nabihah, there's a question for you from one Brenda Kamangara. Brenda asks 3 questions, and part of the question, I'll start with the last one. You talked about cybersecurity balance sheet, Nabihah. And the question is on whether this is an internationally best practice framework or is it locally developed?
All right.
I would like to start with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So our framework is called CVEC, which stands for Cyber Visibility and Exposure Quantification. And what we did was we looked at different international best practice standards and picked the controls that would be most relevant from our market. So yes, to answer your question, it is based on international best practice standards. It just focuses on the controls which are most relevant for this market. Because if you look at these frameworks and standards, implementing them could be quite costly. It costs a lot of money. So what we did is we just picked the controls that we felt would be most relevant.
All right, thank you, Nabihah. I hope, Brenda, that answers your last question. And Nabihah, there was also another question. The question is, have you encountered a situation of whether, I'm going to paraphrase it, where you are a new discovered attack vector and subsequent control to manage risk is not yet implemented in the compliance or regulatory tools that you use? That makes sense, Nabihah.
Yes. So I think here what we depend on is a concept called defense in depth. So this is where you're deploying different layers of protection to protect your organization. So if one fails, you have other forms of protection within the network. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Nabihah. And for those of us who are joined in, we also remember that compliance is not really security, but compliance is really important to help you mature your controls. But you might be 100% compliant, but also be a victim of a cyber attack. So it's also important for you to look at different frameworks that are available that help you grow your maturity, but also look for frameworks that also help you ensure effectiveness on your controls. And also at the same time, have frameworks that can help you appreciate how well you're doing in regards to certain attacks. For example, as an organization, if somebody tried to hack you over email, send you a phishing email, are you likely to have your users click on those emails? If somebody tries to compromise your web application, is it possible for that to happen? So from what Nabihah says, it's a combination of different frameworks, both from a maturity and compliance side, and also from an actual attack vector validation. Martin, I want to come back to you on the question from Francis. He had asked on whether the question was on how do you ensure board and other executives support the cybersecurity initiatives, which have been largely considered as AOB?
I think Nabihah handled this very well, and the information and the recommendations from our were on point, especially around quantitative analysis, whereby you are attaching numbers to it. And how does that affect the profitability of the business or not? you could also, again, tie it, like I said before, to how does that, enable you, the different investments and initiatives that you want to run with, enable the business, meet the business strategy, because it's all now goes down to the business strategy. So you need to align it in terms of, these are positive impact if we do 1, 2, 3 things. We move from this position of, of effectiveness and then the financials to this position. And if you can also break it down by different, a phased way of achieving these deliverables. And therefore be able to at least carry the board along and understand and own cybersecurity initiatives. You also need to get the buying in terms of the top down. You also need to them have a clear appreciation of the different, initiatives that are coming through, the different attacks or risks that affect their business, and what is it that you're trying to do about it, the controls that you're trying to implement. So I think those are the two key ways that you can be able to be able to get the buying in from the board. Also have some trend analysis they can be able to reference and say, and have actually a maturity model that can be able to reference and say, and keep KPIs, success KPIs that can be able to tell, we are moving from this position based on the investment that we have done to this position over a certain duration on time. And therefore they can have some level of predictability into the benefits realization angle based on the initiative that you're doing.
All right. Thank you. Very interesting insights there, Martin. And the two things I picked from what you said is, number one, you have to have the business in mind.
Yes.
And those of us joined in, whether you are just starting your career in cybersecurity, you might not visualize your audience as business or the board. But I think from what Martin is saying, it really helps to communicate what you're doing. So that was very insightful, Martin. And then the second thing I heard you say is you've got to think numbers, think metrics. And I think this goes way beyond cybersecurity, but the fact that any one of us joined in from an IT related or technical related field and you want to communicate, it might help the next time you are before a board or a non-technical audience. Look for some metrics that are relevant to them. For example, look at how many number of attacks have happened locally and how many of them are likely to target your organization that you work for. So those are two takeaways from what Martin you said, and thank you very much for that. We are actually wrapping up.
Yes,
yeah, sure.
I just remembered of something. You can also use scenarios, or maybe an organization, you can also learn from other organizations. Let's look at the case of Naivas, the just recent cyber attack that has happened. For sure, there will be some impact in terms of financial loss. Maybe there may be some, legal processes that will look into that if people want to complain their customers. There's a data in terms of getting back their data. There's some charges that maybe the attack, actors would want to get, and therefore that financial impact. How does it affect the top line for Naivas, the projection that they are done for 2023? Okay, and then you can play that scenario now aligned to your own business objective. If you went through a similar thing, and we need now to respond to regulator, there's a legal charge, there's the actors that we need to pay in Bitcoins and all these things. It will translate to a certain amount. How would that impact our top line? Is it a acceptable risk at the board level to say, we are willing to go this vis-a-vis investing this amount of money into a new cybersecurity or security solution? Yeah.
Thank you very much. We are coming to the end of our webinar. And again, we've been having Martin Nkonge, who is a Senior Information Security Officer at Old Mutual. And we've had with us Nabihah Rishad, who is a principal security consultant at Serianu Limited. And I want to give Nabihah and Martin a chance to give us their last words before we end. And I'll start with Nabihah. Considering your passion for mentorship and working with universities, what would be your advice for anyone who is joined in, watching or listening in, and they are looking to start a career in cybersecurity and transition in cyber risk, or generally explore different domains in cybersecurity? What would you advise them to start with?
Thanks, Martin. Cybersecurity is a continuous learning journey. Every day you learn something new. Every day there's a new attack vector. Every day there's a new attack that's happened. So always keep up to date with what's happening. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Also, don't limit yourself to what you want to specialize in as you're starting in your career. Be as open as you can, learn as much as you can. You'll be surprised that what you thought you'd want to focus on is not actually what you enjoy. So have an open mind, identify a mentor, please do. They really help in your career journey, just to share your ideas, what you're thinking. And since they've seen a little bit more, they'll be able to advise you on your next steps. Thank you, Martin.
All right, thank you so much, Nabihah. And if you don't mind, for the sake of our audience, if you can share a contact, maybe email or a phone number that people joining in can reach out to you, I think we'd really appreciate that. Martin, to you, there are a lot of us who are joined in and would like to really understand how to build expertise in their specific domain, in information security, in IT risk. Those of us who are joined in and they have begun this journey, Martin, where would you advise them to go next in terms of really perfecting their art?
Thank you, Martin. From where I sit, I think we need to appreciate that there are very different career paths that you can take within information security. And therefore, maybe an understanding of exactly what is it that excites you. Is it risk management? Is it threat analysts? Is it bug hunting and ethical hacking? And then from there, try to build the different skills that you need. A lot of insights nowadays you get, and a lot of training is available online. A lot of webinars and seminars, and just trying out the different environments that you can. Also identify a mentor within that area, just like Nabihah said, who has a little bit of more experience that can be able to guide you through the journey and help you to quicken the progression within your career path. I think that's where I will leave it at.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Martin. Nabihah has shared her LinkedIn name on chat and also her phone number. Thank you so much, Nabihah. Martin, if you could also be so kind to share with us the contact that those of us joined in can reach out to you. A common denominator from the last words from Nabihah and Martin is identify a mentor. And I think we have two able mentors joining us today. So please feel free to reach out to Martin and Nabihah if you're just starting your journey, or if you want to get some tips here and there on how to better what you are doing. This has been a very insightful session. Those of us who are on LinkedIn, please feel free to share your comments on any of the posts. There was a post by Nabihah, there was a post from myself. Please feel free to append any of your learnings to those posts and share what you have learned today to others. Otherwise, unless there are any questions, I could give a minute or two. Anyone with a question want to post on chat? All right. Thank you very much, Nabihah and Martin, once again for making time to join us. And to everyone, do have yourself a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.